So we are saying more than 200,000 white males, not white people, white males, just males, will lose their jobs in Gauteng alone because of the new law. Because of the new law. And somehow we are supposed to sit and act as if nothing is going on in this
Yeah.
country. The reality is the white population in South Africa is ever declining. It is declining at about 5% year on year. So it is not looking great.
My guest is Khule Charles Maseku, popular South African podcaster and co-host of State of the Nation. Khule was selected as an honoree, I think that's kind of like a winner, in the 2025 Mail and Guardian Young South African Awards in the politics and governance category. That's quite something, Khule, to be part of the Mail and Guardian's top 200 young South Africans.
Firstly, thank you, Johan, for the wonderful invite and greetings to your guests and your viewers at home. Yes, it was. It was a special moment for me and the other 199 people that were there, part of the top 200. Obviously, falling under different categories, and these are seen as future catalysts and future leaders
Yeah.
of South Africa, right? Popularly enough, Julius Malema actually won this award a couple of years ago. Trevor Noah did, including Piglin
In
Balula.
good company.
So I am amongst the list of some dodgy but some amazing characters.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you say it's sort of selecting the 200 top young South Africans that will build the future of South Africa. And that is exactly the reason why I've invited you. Because as you know, I've been away from South African shores for some time, and sometimes I'm not quite as informed as I ought to be or should be. And I'm very much excited to talk to you specifically because you're a young black South African. I think you get
Right.
that.
Yes,
Okay.
no, I do. Yes.
Yeah. I also read, just for fun, I did a little bit of research on you, and I thought this was interesting. You were also one of the top 50 finalists in the Mr. South Africa competition. What was that about?
So that was back in 2022. I was part of a little competition, Mr. South Africa, sort of talent search, all that stuff, and I was part of that competition. And I know it's not a usual thing for people to think us podcasters or us politicians would
Yeah,
engage in modeling and all that stuff, but that was a different era of my life back
yeah,
then. It was a different era, trying
yeah.
new things.
Um, you've been co-hosting State of the Nation since December 2024, I noticed here, and in particular in the Political Insider segment, working with Mike Sham. What is
Yes.
it like to work with Mike Sham? Because I have the impression that he is one of our best podcasters.
Oh, the best guy ever. Mike and I are he's like look, I mean my father is very present in my life, obviously, but he's like a secondary father. He's got amazing advice. It's
Yeah.
unbelievable. It's one of the best things ever. Mike and I get along like best pals, quite honestly.
Yeah.
We hang out quite a lot. We talk for hours on the phone.
Yeah.
We do a lot of research together. We analyze, we debate together. So oftentimes people watch the show and
Yeah.
watch the 20-minute or 10-minute production, whether it be 10 minutes with Khule or State of the Nation. And people often think that, okay, maybe this was just done haphazardly or just, oh, here's the news. Let me go and produce this. No, oftentimes Mike and I would have the debates over
Yeah.
certain issues, and
Yeah.
we'd debate for hours about how things should be. And then all of a sudden a show comes out of that. And that's the beauty of working with co-hosting State of the Nation. It opens up one's eyes to different perspectives because I'll be honest, I guess the beauty of State of the Nation is it's one old guy, being Mike Sham, who is white, who is Lebanese, not even Afrikaner. And he
Mm.
has had the benefit of being white, but not being Afrikaner during the apartheid regime.
Yeah. Yeah.
So somewhat he does understand what it is to not be Afrikaner in a pro-Afrikaans regime, because many people think apartheid was pro-white, while no, it wasn't. It had a main focus on the Afrikaner nation, you
Mhm.
know, and that's where he comes in with that. And then here comes this young black guy
Yeah.
who, to be quite honest, I've never really spent much of my older life in a township, to be honest with
Mhm.
you.
Mhm.
I've been to private schools. I've never been to public school in my life. So
Yeah.
I've never gotten to understand the poverty that Black South Africans face
Yeah. Yeah.
personally, but I've seen it. And here come these two incredible patriotic South Africans that all they want to do is build the best for this country. I mean, quite honestly, um, Mike and I, we can butt heads, but when we butt heads, it's out of the love for this
Yeah.
country. And
Yeah. Yeah.
and we've got love for both black and white people. When I look at you, Johan, I look at a South African. I don't look at a white South African. I look at a South African. And I believe that is how Mike looks at all of us. And that's the beauty of working at State of the Nation.
Yeah, well, that's also, I would imagine, the ideal of the rainbow nation as well. But we'll get to that, and I want to talk to you about your background, your own evolution, how you grew up, etc., etc. But first, tell me a little bit about 10 Minutes with Khule. That's your own independent podcast that you run.
Right. So I realized, I mean, because Mike and I had been working on this podcast, State of the Nation. And he says to me, quickly, let's start the political insider for you, specifically for you.
Yeah,
That's how it
yeah,
started before Mike sort of headlines it now. But that's how it started with me. And we produced, I think, was it 2 episodes a week? But I had realized that there was a market for this 10 minutes type of news commentary, this fast
yeah,
paced news
yeah,
commentary
yeah,
where
yeah,
we are
yeah,
direct, straight to the point, and we break down issues that people don't understand. And there's one, I would guess, advantage I had, which I would like to believe other podcasters don't have, which was I am already in politics.
yeah,
So when I said the story, I would share the inside scoop, which started the political insider, hence the name
yeah.
political insider, because it was for the inside scoop. And it took off. I mean, it really did. Took off like a fireball.
Yeah, yeah. I must say, I have the impression that it's very popular, and I have watched some of your episodes, and I do think it's nice, to the point, sometimes provocative. It's a good listen. June 25, you left Herman Mashaba's Action South Africa. It's all very recent stuff. And
Yeah.
you moved towards the Democratic Alliance. You just told me now that you've become the spokesperson for Tswane for the Democratic Alliance. Congratulations with that. I think that's very recent.
Yes, thank you so much. Yes, that was indeed. It's been
Yeah.
less than a month actually in the role.
Okay.
But yeah, so I left Action SA, and to be quite frank, I was the provincial campaigns manager. I was actually in Action SA before it even became Action SA. I was there from the People's Dialogue. So I had been, I would guess, a young ancestor or a young stalwart of the party, someone that believed in this vision before it even became the party. So I'd been there believing in the libertarian ideals and the nationalist vision that Action SA had at that point in time before it took an off ramp. So one of the main reasons I left Action SA, quite honestly, was the lack of decisiveness of what happens after the first general election. The party
Mhm.
had been in decline, yes, but I didn't leave because of the decline. I left because of what happened after the decline, which was there was a lack of proper decision making because many leaders were leaving the party after the decline. And I had raised issues. I actually had a formal letter which had been published by a couple of news outlets where I had stated there that we're not doing anything about key leaders leaving the party. We can't continue business as normal. And I had also gotten an inside scoop from an ANC friend of mine who had told me that Khule, Action SA is going to pull out of the City of Tshwane coalition in
Mhm.
favor for the ANC coalition.
Yeah.
And, Silius Brink and I come a long way from Action SA days. where we had really gotten along from there. And he knows very well that I've always been an advocate for that administration. I was pro Silius Spring for my days in Action SA. So I couldn't simply support this. And I had said, enough is enough. I'm pulling out. And when I pulled out, I didn't do the normal politician thing of joining another political party immediately. What I had done was I'd gone into NGOs and I'd gone back into civil society to try and look at how I can add to society, the
Yeah.
greater society. And well, like any other politician, you end up being caught back into politics, and that's how I
Yeah.
ended up back in the GA.
I
Right.
want to talk to you about the most sort of recent events in South Africa. The news at the moment, now part of it, the news that I received here at the moment, of course, is that huge, big orange banner that I think, people of Solidarity put on some highways in South Africa to welcome the folks who's coming to the G20, with the text that reads, "Welcome to the most race-regulated country in the world." My very first question, obviously, is, do you agree with the banner statement?
Yes, yes, it is quite true. And this is a personal, it's not my DA agreement. This is Khuhle's the individual. Yes, it is true. South Africa is the most race-regulated country in the world. I mean, we literally cannot get that big needle of race out of our eyes. You know,
Mm,
everything revolves around race in this country, quite honestly. And perhaps it's one of the painful cons of our diversity, that being so diverse, we end up having these issues where we believe that, oh, now race has to be the biggest issue in the room. Firstly, secondly, I don't know if perhaps this is going to be a follow-up question I'm answering it already, but why would the city of Johannesburg and the Gauteng provincial government be so bothered about a banner that speaks of race if it wasn't true? If it
yeah,
wasn't true, why are
yeah,
you bothered?
yeah,
You know?
yeah,
And
yeah,
number two, aren't they bigger problems for us to be taking care of?
yeah.
Why is it that our leaders or the politicians or those that lead the province of Gauteng and the city of Johannesburg are so fixated in building a Potomac city, where everything is just fake, and we want to create a sort of a fake reality for visitors that are coming. They should come and see the harsh reality that
Yeah.
South Africans live in.
Do you think that it is an infringement of free speech, the right to free speech in South Africa, to have removed the banner?
Yes, it is, Johan. Let's be quite honest. It is an infringement of free speech. If free speech was so free, why are you stopping it?
Yeah.
Let me be quite honest. As a black guy who drives down that road, I did not see an attack on a black person from that banner. I don't see
Mhm.
that banner attacking any black person for that matter. I don't see it attacking a white person. I just see it simply speaking about the truth of what's going on in this country, you know. So we cannot compare it to situations such as Kill the Boer. Because Kill the Boer is not free speech. That is what they should be taking down. And you ask yourself of the double standards. How is Kill the Boer going to be changed into some struggle song? Or some, oh no, it's a struggle song, therefore we can all sing it. That's
Mhm.
rubbish.
Yeah.
But when someone raises an issue about race relations in this country while not attacking anyone, that is now jeopardizing someone's life. Whose life? Is
Mhm.
it jeopardizing the lady in Soweto who can't afford bread? Who did not probably even know that that ban exists, because there's
Yeah.
no point of her going to town because she doesn't have a job. We've got to get to the point where we focus on serious issues. And the ANC has got this approach, including the EFF and Umkhonto weSizwe. They've got this approach to life where we will take care of the issues that aren't really issues
Yeah. Yeah.
and not
Yeah.
focus on the real issues in the room.
South Africa will be handing over the chairmanship, I think, of the G20 in December somewhere to the
Right.
Americans. It would have been a massive occasion for South Africa uh, had Donald Trump decided to come to South Africa. The opposite of that statement is that it's a huge slap in the face of Ramaphosa.
Mm.
Just in general terms, how do, and I don't want to push you in a corner now because you're a young black man, but your young black contemporaries, how do they view this slap in the face of Ramaphosa and South Africa's deteriorating relationship with the USA?
It's just ludicrous what's going on, Johan. When you look at Durko and Durko's statements that come out, we are trying to sort out a trade package deal with the US. And
Yeah,
then Figile Mbalula, out of the blue, says Afrikaners are now killing each other in the US. How on earth do you think we are going to get a trade deal out of that? Now, the issue is young black South Africans already have got a stigma of hate towards the US because of imperialism. You know, this idea that there's Western imperialism. Young black South Africans believe that refuge and the future of this country lies in being friends with Russia and friends with Iran and Palestine and all these other rogue nations of the world. And my quick, short, and sweet answer to that is no, it isn't. Because
yeah,
those are countries that don't believe in democracy. So if you are a believer in democracy, you are a believer in women's rights, you're a believer in freedom of speech, you will naturally stand with the West, therefore standing with the United States of America. You wouldn't
yeah,
stand with Russia, which kills Navalny. You
yeah.
wouldn't stand with China, which kills anyone that opposes Xi Jinping.
No.
So I guess that is the lack of education that young black South Africans suffer when it comes to the conversation. But I don't believe that young black South Africans understand the significance of Donald Trump not attending the G20 summit.
I find it fascinating because when I grew up, of course, I grew up with Elvis Presley. I grew up
Mm.
with American culture. We grew up with the idea of American, the beacon, the house on the hill, the Ronald Reagan's, what is it,
American dream.
all of that. Are you saying to me that amongst just ordinary people, and if I talk about ordinary people, 70-80% of those people in South Africa will be black people, that the mood has changed in terms of that towards America amongst ordinary people I'm talking about now?
Yes, yes, yes. The mood has changed. It has drastically shifted. It has. You know, it has shifted to a point where, and it has been done strategically, to be quite honest with you. You've got organizations such as Gift of the Givers, you know, and I've got my own issues with them. I don't like them personally. I've got my own issues with them where I feel there's this huge focus on Palestine. Be that as it may, there's no focus on South Africa as the country. You know, if you look at our trade relations with the US, and this is things that black people don't take into consideration. I'm saying this as a black person, is we've got a trade surplus with the US. We've
Mm-hmm.
got a billion dollar trade surplus with the US. And just to put that in layman's terms, it means our trade with the US, we make a profit when we trade with the US because we get more. That's just in layman's terms for those that are watching. Now, with China and Russia, we've got a huge trade deficit that runs in the tens of billions.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
somehow those are our best friends. The
Mm-hmm.
Chinese have closed down, have actually indirectly made us close down textile industries that existed in the Western Cape. They've never built a factory in South Africa and they take jobs. They literally come bring cheap Chinese products from overseas. They
Yeah,
take jobs. While America has created hundreds of thousands of jobs in South Africa,
yeah,
America has created close to 1 million jobs in South Africa, close to 1 million jobs in South Africa. And majority of those jobs benefit black South Africans. And
yeah,
people don't take that into consideration. If today America decides to pull out its investment into Roslyn, pulls out its investment into Ford, the amount of black South Africans that will suffer,
yeah,
it, it is too, it is a nightmare to even conceive. You can't even think about it.
yeah,
So
yeah,
people need to understand where their bread is buttered and
yeah,
have respect for where your bread is buttered. That's how I live my life, to be quite
yeah.
honest.
Yeah. Khule, do you think that this is a anti-Trump thing or an anti-America thing? In other words, what I'm saying is that in 3 years' time, Trump will no longer be there. Do you think that we will find some kind of a balanced approach again post-Trump?
To find a balanced approach post-Trump is possible. It is possible, even though let's take into cognizance the fact that a couple of Democrat House representatives did vote for Senator Ronnie Jackson's bill of
Yeah.
sanctioning South Africa. So you need to consider that. But I do believe that post-Trump relations would have stabilized. But let
Yeah.
us not remove our eyes from the elephant in the room, which is the fact that South Africa has always been like this towards the United States. We've always been friends with Iran before Donald Trump.
Mhm.
This isn't a Trump issue. This is a South Africa international relations issue.
Yeah, but is it a
You know,
South Africa thing or is it an ANC thing?
it's an ANC thing, largely. It's an ANC thing. Let's
Mhm.
remember that Joe Biden acknowledged the fact that South Africa was friends with America's enemies, but had said that he was very careful of how to deal with that situation
Yeah.
because he did not want to deteriorate the relations that America had with South Africa at the same time, because South Africa is a key gateway to Africa. And you've got a guy like Donald Trump, the benevolent sort of dictator who just comes in and doesn't give a damn, you know. He will do as he pleases. So it is an ANC thing, to be quite honest. In fact, it is a communist thing because I would like to believe that majority of South Africans, as many don't really see the US as being our messiah to economic prosperity in terms of investment. But I would like to believe that majority of South Africans are not bothered about what goes on in Russia, are not
Mhm.
bothered about what goes on in Iran. So it's more of an ANC thing.
Question at the end of the day for Donald Trump, of course, I think the interesting question is who's the winner here in terms of this whole spat now of the G20? Will it be South Africa at the end of the day, the USA, China, BRICS, Russia? There is this whole geopolitical shift happening. So I guess, and that's my question then, is don't you think that what is happening right now will um, actually really push South Africa closer to BRICS, closer to Russia, closer to China, and will actually, it will not achieve the aims and goals of Donald Trump at the end of the day, that he might turn out on the long term the loser in this game?
Look, what you're saying, Johan, is so right. I'd mentioned this before to the US Charge, which is the acting ambassador because there's no ambassador at the moment. I had mentioned it face to face actually at the American Independence Day celebration, where I had said, I am pro Trump. That's me, Khule, pro Trump. But I am very careful of how we should deal with South Africa. And I'm speaking from a South African perspective because, you know, there's a point where you beat someone and you push them away versus disciplining them. You know, it's sort of like a mother's love. A mother
Mm.
can hit you today and, you know, give you a clap on your head. But when
Yeah,
she gives you a clap on your head when you're 21, she's not disciplining you, she's pushing you away, you
yeah.
know. And that is the thing that I'm looking at when it comes to how America is dealing with South Africa is be very careful. Do not punish South Africa to a point where they're literally like, okay, we are totally becoming pro-Russia.
I'm going to move the subject to a very sort of touchy thing. People get very angry. People are very emotional about the subject that I'm going to touch on now. Who speaks for who in terms of the Afrikaner today? What do you make of this declaration of the 41 Afrikaner, would imagine writers, intellectuals, etc., and their representation of the Afrikaner as opposed to the Kali Creoles, the Adams Rootsers, the Solidarity, the AfriForum people? Who's now talking on whose name, I guess, is the question. What do you make about of this whole big fight within
Mm.
Afrikaner circles?
Now let's look at this Afrikaner, these 41 writers, as you're saying. It has been proven that a couple of them have got links to government.
Hmm.
It's been proven that they've got links. So when I look at this, I look at it very carefully. Because I would rather believe civil society than believe anyone that has got links to any government for that matter.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
civil society is exactly what it is. It speaks on behalf of society, on behalf of the masses. Now, let's look at it this way. When Kali Creel speaks on behalf of the Afrikaners, he speaks on behalf of AfriForum, an organization where thousands and thousands of Afrikaners pay membership every month. Thousands and thousands of Afrikaners go into branch meetings every month to discuss. I don't know what is being discussed, but to go and discuss. So I would rather believe Kali Creel, someone who actually has a constituency. I mean, why would I believe 41 people that can't tell me who are their constituents?
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
mean, show me who are the people that you represent. Like literally show me that these are our members that actually believe in what we are saying. They can't do that. But Kali Creel can. I mean, we can't forget AfriForum is a big organization, part including Solidarity and SAI, the South African Agriculture Institute. These are huge organizations that represent thousands and thousands of people that
Yeah.
have expressed a certain view on what is going on in South Africa. And let's not forget, Johan, that within AfriForum, there were a couple of Afrikaners that said they don't believe that an Afrikaner genocide is happening within AfriForum.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I would believe that type of objectiveness that is happening within an organization. If a couple of people can come out and say, yes, it is happening, and a couple of others can say, no, it's not, I believe somewhere in that there is truth.
Yeah.
Rather than a couple of people who, God knows where they come from, just write a letter and send it through a bought media production and say, this is what's going on.
Okay, Khule, you use the word now. So you've gotten me onto this discussion now. You're to be blamed for this. You use the word genocide right now. I want to read to you a Trump quote here on Truth Me. I think it's not Truth Media. You guys are from Truth Media. He's Truth Social. Trump quoted
Right.
in terms of the G20 attendance or not, it is a total disgrace that the G20 will be held in South Africa. Afrikaners, people who are descended from Dutch settlers and also French and German immigrants, are being killed and slaughtered, and their land and farms are being illegally confiscated. No US government official will attend as long as these human rights abuses continue. I look forward to hosting the 2026 G20 in Miami, Florida. Those are Trump's words. Um, we've touched on the subject now. Is that a fair assessment from Trump to make? And I go specifically to the words are being killed and slaughtered, and their lands and farms are being illegally confiscated.
Well, to be honest on that part is, I mean, obviously, I do think that it's a bit of a, it's a bit of a, it's a bit of a hyperbole here, right? To be quite honest, as in, it's a bit of some exaggeration that is being added into this. But also, let's be quite honest. Afrikaners are facing persecution in South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
It is quite literal. It is happening. Maybe not to that extent of saying they are being slaughtered. I mean, because that sounds as if we have got the Rwanda genocide happening when you
Yeah.
say people are being slaughtered and, are being massacred. But they are being persecuted. Let's be quite honest. And we can prove it on many counts. Why is it that when farm murders happen, people go in, they kill the farmers, but they don't steal anything? Basically, the crime was not even about theft. It was about hate that is being spread by the politicians. So, to a certain degree, he is right. To a certain degree, he is wrong. And he is wrong in terms of presenting it as if we've got a Rwanda genocide or a Hotel Mumbai situation. But he is right to say that people are facing land expropriation. I mean, we saw the story that is happening in Ekhuruleni in the East Rand, where there is a plot that is currently being looked at by the city of Ekhuruleni to be expropriated. We've seen in the city of Tshwane, which is the Action SA government, mind you, that wants to expropriate buildings that are owned by white South Africans. It is happening.
Yeah.
So, so part and part is true, but part and part it is not true.
Yeah.
So he's got a point, and I would agree with him as someone who stands up for democracy, who loves democracy. I wouldn't attend anything that is being hosted by the ANC. So I do agree with him.
I want to stay on the subject just for a little while, partially because I'm an Afrikaner myself as well. Do you today, I think you've partially maybe answered that already, understand the fear and the anger of so many Afrikaners? I hear it on a daily basis. Do you understand that?
Yes, yes, I do. I mean, let me be quite honest yet again. Like I've said, I guess maybe this is very naive of me to say, but I've got many Afrikaans friends. I've probably got more Afrikaans friends than I've got black friends.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that is to try and say that I am also surrounded by the commentary of how
Yeah,
they feel about the
yeah,
country, and what's going on in the country. And let me be frank, Johan, if you live in a society which says, and we can go into, and I'm going to build up my point here so that people can understand the Afrikaner perspective, which is we've got higher education institutions such as UCT that say if you are black, you count as a PDP, which is previously disadvantaged persons, meaning you can get into UCT with lower marks than a white person. It's facts. It's literally written there. It's not me making it up or it's not Khule's opinion. It is a fact. It is written. I can produce the document for you.
yeah.
Same as UKZN, University of KwaZulu Natal. They have got a strict condition where they say students that apply from public schools and township public schools can apply with lower marks than those that apply from suburban schools. Now, let's park that for a matter. Did you know that universities, when they admit students, they take in students based on race as well? They also do look at the number of black students they take in, and they also look at the number of white students they take in. Did you know that NSFAS factors in the fact that you're white if you apply for a NSFAS bursary or for a NSFAS loan? Did you know that? Did you know that if you are white, it is damn hard to get a job in government today? It
Mm-hmm.
is, even if you're qualified. I mean, we can both be qualified, but because you're white, trust me, Johan, let's just imagine you and I decide to apply to be media correspondents for, I don't know, the government's, I don't want to use SABC, but a government owned media house or like GCIS, Let's
Mm-hmm.
imagine both of us apply. Do you know that I would get the job even though you are more experienced than me?
Yeah,
And that is
yeah.
because I'm black. So there's a lot of social engineering that is purposely keeping Afrikaners and white people to a large extent out of being participants in the economy. You look at this new BEE law that has just been passed this earlier on this year, which says people can now buy a BEE status. You can now buy a BEE status.
Yeah.
And if you don't look at the BEE status, you look at the new
It's like
EEA law.
it sounds really like cash up front, please.
Yeah. But here's the most interesting one, which is the new BEE and EEA law. And this is a very interesting one. And it states that within the next 5 years, in order for your company not to face penalties from the government, right? And you've got more than 50 employees, your company needs to be a representative of South Africa's racial makeup.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, understand this very well. Let's say Khule owns a company, and I'm going to use simple maths here. So I won't use the 50. I will use, let's say, 10 people. Now, let's say I've got 10 managers. 5 of the 10 happen to be white, and then 2 are black, 3 are Indian. Do you know that I've got to get rid of 3 white managers and I've got to get rid of 2 Indian managers? And the rest in between have got to be black and 1 colored. Do we take into the fact that white people are going to systematically be forced to lose jobs? I mean, I did a tally, which my political party also did, but I also did one in my own regard.
Yeah.
In Gauteng, over 200,000 white males would be losing their jobs by the year 2028 because of this law. In Gauteng alone. That is not counting the other 8 provinces in South Africa.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to
Now,
ask you. I'm going to ask you, Khule. I'm going to ask you to say that again for all clarity. What you just said to me.
right. So, in Gauteng alone, with this new BE and EA law that has just come into effect, it is estimated, and I've done the maths myself, not just me, the DA has also done its own maths, including other organizations. And we have all come to the figure of a greater number than 200,000. So we are saying more than 200,000 white males, not white people, white males, just males, will lose their jobs in Gauteng alone because of the new law. Because of the new law. And somehow we are supposed to sit and act as if nothing is going on in this
Yeah.
country. The reality is the white population in South Africa is ever declining. It is declining at about 5% year on year. So it is not looking great
Yeah.
for.
My question here is, Khule, does government not understand that they are actually destroying human capital in the process?
Does government not understand? Well, they do understand. The issue here is if we are going to have a prosperous country, that means we're going to have a country with highly skilled, highly educated people who will realize why on earth are we voting for the ANC? It's literally going to come down to that. Why
Yeah.
on earth are we voting for the ANC? The ANC realizes there is more power in keeping the vast majority of people, being black people, impoverished. There is more power keeping black people slaves of the government. The ANC literally gives themselves a pat on the shoulder for grants. They literally say, well done for the fact that you were on a child grant when you were born. Well done for the fact that you're on a government nutrition program. They say, well done for the fact that, oh, you went and studied for a useless qualification, mind you, in varsity or TVET college under
Yeah.
NSFAS using our taxpayers' money. You don't pay back the money on top of that. So everything in your life has been for free. And because the economy is so down bad, you can't get a job. You are sitting in a line waiting for your 350 grant. You have therefore become a slave of the government. You have never become emancipated from the government. Hence, it is so difficult for black people to realize the role that white people play in the prospering of this country because we need both black and white people to build this country. That's the bottom line. And the ANC knows that very well. Hence, it will make sure damn well that it is going to make it very difficult for white people to live in this country.
Let me ask you this. When you stand in a queue, you've applied for a job and you're a black person. And what I'm trying to get to is this not becoming the culture that you kind of know because you have a black skin that you're going to get that job?
So,
Is that
so
a vulgar? Is that a vulgar question to ask? Is it a
no, it's
politically?
not. It's a very fair question, a quite honest one. A quite fair one, to be quite honest, rather. And that is because it is true, Johan, that the only trick is because unemployment is so high, people end up thinking you'll only get the job through nepotism. But
Mm,
uh, but to be
okay.
quite literal, but to be quite literal,
Yeah.
yes, it is true that as a black person you do see your odds as higher. I
Mm,
mean, whenever I apply for something. I mean, black people know that to apply to get into university, you probably have a higher chance, like I said, than a white person.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
it creates a very dangerous precedent within
Yeah.
society. And what do I mean? It creates the precedent of the fact that you are not here on merit.
Yeah.
You didn't get this because you deserve it. You got this because of we are championing social engineering. We are doing this because, oh gosh, you are a previously disadvantaged person. In fact, we don't even see as equal. So we'll make the requirements slightly less for you so that you can just get in. And
Yeah.
people don't understand this. I mean, for those that have actually worked in the private sector, like you and I, Johan, you'll know very well that colleagues have got this thing of ranking each other, where we sort of look at you and we're like, you are intelligent, that's why you are here. Or the boss likes you, that's why you got the promotion. You know, it happens in all organizations for
Yeah.
that matter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, imagine being black and you go into an organization because you're black, you're sitting with your white colleagues and you're in an important strategic meeting.
Hmm.
And your white colleagues are looking at you like, he only got this job because you're black.
Yeah.
Do
Yeah.
you think they see you? Do you think they value your input? Do you
Yeah.
think they value your intelligence? And the true answer is no, they don't. Oftentimes, oftentimes you'll be given the roles of HR. You won't be given the key strategic roles because you only got in there because of this, the color of
Yeah.
your skin, not based off intelligence. Now, the person who mastered this, I think, very well in South Africa has to be Rassi Erasmus. Now, what I mean is, before the Siya Kolisi captaincy era, we all used to look at the Springboks and say, oh, the black guys that are there are just to, achieve quotas. So
Yeah.
government does not bash
Yeah. Yeah.
SARU,
Yeah.
government
Yeah.
doesn't do anything to SARU. Now you look at the Springbok team. It's a diverse team. It's got Indians playing rugby. Believe it or not.
Yeah.
It's got coloreds playing rugby, which is normal. It's got white people, it's got black people. And I kid you not, if there is a young black debutante who makes a run out there onto Ellis Park for his debut match, there is no single Afrikaner that doubts the potential of that guy.
Yeah.
And that is
Yeah.
because they believe that he earned his spot there. And that is
Yeah.
because of the culture that Rassi Erasmus built within the Springboks, which is the real diversity,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
a real when we say real diversity, about bringing people together, not this fake diversity of
Yeah.
you will be here just because you want to achieve targets.
Yeah, yeah, and I'll take you a bet that those Afrikaans people who love rugby so much will embrace that darker Indian, black, or whatever rugby player as it just their own, because they understand how hard he had fought to get there. They admire him and appreciate him for his talent and for his skills.
Mm.
I want to talk about your own personal journey, which fascinates me personally. I noted down here for me, you born in 2004. I think that was during the Mbeki years. You grew up in an affluent Catholic family with a multicultural heritage blending South African, Scottish, and Malawian roots. Tell me about the Scottish part of your DNA.
Right. So everyone asked this question. I sort of knew where you're going when you started reading. Basically, my mother is part Scottish, my blood mother. Her great grandmother is fully Scottish.
Uh-huh.
So it's sort of like a trail going down that gets to me. So they had a thing. I don't know if it was a fancy thing back in the day of where they would link up with black people, and it sort of got darker and darker and darker and darker and darker till we got to this product. So so uh,
Got to
when
this
it comes
product.
to funny enough, my great grandmother's surname. And I've actually got a picture of them that actually I've got that hangs on my wall. My great
Mhm.
grandmother, including my uncle, where you can see that he's actually the real Scottish. His
Yeah.
hair is, all straight and all and light skin and blah, blah, blah. Their surname was Castles. Their surname wasn't an African surname.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to the Malawian side, is my father's father happened to be Malawian.
Mhm.
So that's my grandfather. So that's a lot closer, actually. He happened to be Malawian. He came from Malawi during apartheid years. He actually even died here. So, what do you call it? So, my family is quite mixed, to be quite honest. Is very mixed. We've got colored relatives. we've got foreign relatives, we've got, so we are very mixed.
Yeah, yeah.
So I've got the beauty of diversity and
I
understanding
was
how diversity can work well.
I was just wondering in my mind now whether you would not have done better at that Mr. South Africa competition if you'd worn a Scottish kilt. That would have scored you some points. Um,
At some point.
yeah, I want to just understand your journey a little bit. Who was Nelson Mandela to you when you grew up as a kid?
Okay, so interesting story is Nelson Mandela is probably the first book I remember ever getting as a gift.
Hmm.
So my parents, and this is advice to future parents that are watching the show, but my parents never believed in buying me toy guns or
Hmm.
believed in buying me all those. They bought me Legos, they bought me books. So I had books on Steve Biko, I had books on Nelson Mandela. So Nelson Mandela was the first book I had,
Yeah.
the nice color book, the one that said A Long Walk to Freedom. And I'd become much aware of this great figure called Nelson Mandela. I was actually awake the day he died in 2013. You know, I'd been so aware of this great figure. Now, to me, Nelson Mandela, when I was a kid, was this great reconciler.
Hmm.
He sort of was, I would say, the guy who practiced a lot of what Jesus did that us real human beings can't do, which is
Hmm.
forgiveness,
Yeah.
you know, which is the ability to say, I will forgive you. I see you as my brother and sister. Let us build a prosperous country where we can all live together. And I mean, I saw this from the ripe old young age of 9, 8 years old, that this was a reconciler, quite honestly. And as years move on into my more teenage years, when the EFF started to be developed, and you listen to figures such as Julius Malema speaking of Nelson Mandela and saying that Nelson Mandela was a sellout and he basically sold our country to the Afrikaners during the TRC. Many people took that stance, but I guess maturity made me not to take that stance because I sort of understood where Nelson Mandela came from. You know, oftentimes we butt heads with our fathers because we don't understand why our fathers do things the way they do things. But the older you get, you sort of realize why your dad did things the way he did those things.
Yeah.
And that is how I feel about Nelson Mandela. I think he is the pivotal figure in our country. I believe he's one of the key reasons we still do have white South Africans that live in South Africa. Because if we had a Chris Hani, I'm sorry to say, 90% of white South Africans would be out of here.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, so he is a very important figure in the reconciliation aspect of our country.
Yeah. When did you become aware of your history, uh, Khule? When did it become something? I spoke to a musician not too long ago, a black musician, fantastic
Right.
music, who did a Afrikaans song. And he told me, and I want to find out if it's maybe the way you experience it as well, that when he was also in a private school and in his primary school, in a multiracial school as well. So he grew up with Indian kids, white kids, Afrikaans kids, whatever the case might be, the whole multiculti thing. And they all just were kids and they all just played and they were good mates and what have you, and absolutely nothing wrong, till the point when history lessons were introduced in secondary schools and kids became more and more aware of the history of South Africa. And then that brought about tension between the different races. What was your experience like?
So, firstly, is like I said, I've always been in a private school my whole life. I went to a school called St. Peter's Primary School, Catholic school. And the funny thing was, so in that school, there were a couple of white kids and black kids. Now, the interesting thing was, I was from a very young age friends with the white kids to a point where I was the only black kid invited to this white birthday party,
Mm,
this white kid's birthday party back then. So to me, that taught me one thing is no one is born with hate. Hate is something that is taught to us. It is
mhm,
something literally that is taught to us. There's no one that is born a racist. You know, everything that we are condemned into, we are taught or we are forced into. Same as religion. You know, I'm a firm believer that no one is born Christian. It is your parents that make you Christian or make you Jewish or make you Muslim. You know, you didn't just come with this decision that I'm
Yeah.
going to be this,
Yeah.
you know. So, and now something just left my head as I was raising that point. Oh, yes, now I remember the same musician that you're speaking to, and I think we do have shared experiences, is let's look at specific regions such as Asia. You know, if you go to the continent of Asia, race relations is not a big issue in Asia. It really isn't, despite the
Hmm.
fact that they were colonized. It isn't as much of a big issue as it is in Africa, to be
Yeah.
more specific. And that is because there is not a huge focus on that part of history. Now, I've been a firm believer that if we can really start to move on from the idea of making everything about the history of race, but rather look at things from the history of society back then. And what do I mean? Are we going to say that white people colonizing black people is a race relation or is a racial issue? No, we shouldn't. And that is because Shaka Zulu did the same thing. Shaka Zulu also used to go and take control of other tribes, which was a form of colonization. So
Yeah.
that was the way people used to live back in those days. Now, if you can look at history in that lens, that this was the way people lived, not
Hmm.
as a race relation or as a racial issue, you start to look at things a little bit differently. Now, I do think that we have to look at the syllabus that our young South Africans are going through, because that is an issue. If we are to deal with the huge racial relations that exist in this country, we've got to look at that syllabus around apartheid and around colonization. Because us keeping that syllabus as is not going to deal with the huge elephant in the room, which is these infights between the racial groups.
Yeah. Yeah. Your reaction to Afrikaners who are saying and telling me our history, just based on what you just said right now, the syllabus and the history class. Afrikaners are telling me, my people are telling me that our entire history has been erased and is being replaced by the history of the ANC. Are they correct if they say that?
Yes, they are correct. They are correct. You know, funny enough was I love history. History is one of my favorite things to read up on during my spare time. Now, I went to the Fort Trekker Monument in Pretoria. It's one of my favorite places to go to whenever I just want peace of mind. Now, the Fort Trekker Monument has got so much Zulu history in the Fort Trekker Monument, right? And speaks great of the Zulu nation, not badly. Speaks
Hmm.
great of the Zulu nation and how the Afrikaans nation meets the Zulu nation and a whole blah, 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 blah. Now, I've never come across a Zulu guy that goes to the Fort Trekker Monument and says they've never felt proud of that place
Hmm.
because they also feel represented. Now, the trick is the ANC is trying to delete Afrikaner heritage. And I'll give you an example. Did you know that the ANC gives Freedom Park, which is a neighboring monument to the Fort Trekker Monument, gives Freedom Park 100 million rand per annum to run Freedom Park.
Yeah.
But it only gives Fort Trekker Monument 1 million rand, which is a bigger monument. A
Yeah.
monument which is more expensive to run, mind
Yeah.
you,
Yeah. Yeah.
only gets 1 million rand.
And
And
it's
the
also
other one is 50.
and it's also architecturally, of course, incredible and a very impressive building itself as well, just purely from an architectural point of view.
Exactly, exactly. And then, I mean, there's so many points we could make to try and say that you're trying to delete Afrikaner history. I mean, we look at the fact that statues of Afrikaner legends are being taken down. I
Mhm.
mean, you've got Paul Kruger statue, which is always being threatened. There's an incredible lady, one of my favorite people in the DA. Shout out to her, Jackie Ace. She's the chief whip of the DA caucus in Tshwane. So, just a small story, people don't know this. So, this is the first time it's coming out, but it can come out. Was AfriForum wanted to replace the statue of Paul Kruger in Pretoria Central because there was lots of vandalism that was going on at the statue. So they wanted to replace it with a prototype statue. Now Jackie A said, "Hell no, we're not going to do that. We're going to keep the real statue there. We cannot
Yeah.
do this. We have to maintain history." And she said, "We are not dealing with the problem by removing the statue. In fact, we are allowing for the problem to continue." And she said, "In fact, what we should do is to increase security around that statue." And I said, kudos to her. I said, "Well done, my dear. That is right on the money.
Yeah.
She's right. She's right on it."
Yeah.
And you look at the amount of statues that are being vandalized. I mean, not just that. History, South African history on its own is violent, even if we had to take out Afrikaners from the picture. You look at Shaka Zulu, you look at Dingaan, you look at all these figures. South African history has always been violent. But not so long ago, Cyril Ramaphosa was at King Shaka International Airport with the Premier and King Misuzulu erecting the statue of King Shaka because that speaks to the Zulu nation.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there is nothing that the ANC government has done that speaks to the Afrikaans nation.
Yeah.
There's nothing. There is no JB Mark statue that is being built. There is no Jan Stradom or there is no
Yeah.
historical.
It's more the other way around. It's more trying to wipe out that part of history. I will say to you, when I grew up as a kid, and I grew up in the apartheid era, and maybe I'm getting old and maybe I'm not remembering it too well, but I seem to recall that Afrikaners, my people, had a ginormous respect for the Zulu people, the warrior nation, and that I kind of grew up with that little bit of understanding of that part of my history. So just a fun thing to talk about, an observation. You grew up obviously in an affluent environment, in a multicultural environment. I noted here you grew up in Pretoria's East Silver Lakes. East Silver Lakes. So I've been
Yes.
away from South Africa for so long. I thought, let me find out about East Silver Lakes. And it turns out that it's one of the most affluent residential areas in South Africa. I noted here, particularly for its gated golf and wild estates that attract high net worth individuals. HNWIs, they call them, millionaires and international elite. So that's the kind of environment where you come from. I got two questions. Did you, or were you, or how did you actually then view the mass of poverty as a young black man around you? What at some point you must have become aware of the fact that the masses out there are not just poor, they massively. And how did that shape your view and your understanding of apartheid and of the socio-political development of our land? And then I think the ultimate question is, was there a point at which you said, well, the white man is to be blamed for this? I show the finger, I point the finger at the white man.
Right. So I think
Sorry, it's a loaded question. Sorry about that, but I think you get my drift.
Yes, no, I get it. And I'll answer your question in a two-part answer, which is basically for me, obviously living in an affluent area. Like I said, I've never really lived much of my life in a township. My family, my own grandmother lives in a fully paid up house in a suburb in the East Rand with a huge yard, a very huge yard. So I've never gotten to understand poverty personally, outside of my father's family, to say the least. That's where I've gotten to see a bit of poverty. But where I actually got to see poverty personally was when I went to varsity. I got to see poverty when I went to university, which was I went to the Durban University of Technology, and I went to one of their campuses called the Indumiso campus, which happens to be in a township called Mbali in Pietermaritzburg.
Yeah.
Now, here's the very interesting part. Here comes this guy who speaks English day in and day out, moving into a township to study. mind you, it's not as if I can't afford. It's was I have to study because that's why I got my offer to what I want to study for, which is I'm living here amongst a bunch of rural people who, when we speak of poverty, it's poverty in the sense of rural areas, not
Yeah, yeah,
township poverty,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And my eyes became opened to the harsh realities that many young Black South Africans face. And I had great respect for people that came here and were oftentimes the first graduates in their families that would go to such a varsity. And that's where my understanding of poverty came in, as well as the work that I do in politics.
Mm-hmm.
Politics will make you travel very far. We will travel to Hammanskraal. I mean, the other week, I was with Silius Brink on one of our mayoral tours. We're at a place called Nkangala, which is in Ndebele village, on the far eastern side of the city of Tshwane, close to the Mpumalanga border. We'd gotten there to another, it's a pensioner's house. She's taking care of 9 children, and it's a shack. It's literally a shanty town. She doesn't have blankets. When you get in, and it was a cold winter's day to make things worse. You get inside, you can't even breathe because it smells of ash because they've lit a fire to keep themselves warm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That is the level of poverty people live in, and you only become aware once you start to get out of your comfort zone. Oftentimes you think poverty is the RDP house, and you realize that is not poverty.
Yeah,
That is
yeah,
not poverty. The real poverty is in the villages, is in the homelands, where people live in shanty towns, where people have to cross rivers. I've seen so many things, and my eyes have become so opened to the reality that people live in. I mean, I spent 1 year of my life, like I said, at in that township in Bali, uh, living amongst the locals, walking amongst the people, seeing the hopelessness that lives amongst young people. People would drink there every day, drinking alcohol. There's no hope for a brighter day. And I remember after living there for 1 year, I told myself that I can't come back because it was mentally depressing to see the level of hopelessness. I couldn't. I had to
yeah.
leave. And that was how depressing it was. Now, moving on to your second question was, or your other part question was, I mean, when you live in a suburb such as Silver Lakes, yes, there are a large number of Afrikaans people, but the interesting thing is you grow up with a number of Afrikaans and English speaking friends and other black folks that do live in that neighborhood. And because you grew up with them, you often don't see the difference in race and color.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When I go to my neighbor, I go and I greet them by their name, because that's how we've lived. Those are the race relations we've had. We've had respect for each other. They know that whenever Kutle's family needs to have lobola negotiations and they need to slaughter a sheep, you've got to
Did you
deal
do
with that
that?
for that.
Did you do that actually right there in Silver Lake as well?
No, not yet, not yet,
Okay.
not yet. But not yet.
That would
But
have been
trust me,
fun.
no, no.
Mm.
Because my neighbors have done it at least, where they've had literal livestock come over and they had to slaughter the livestock in front of all of us. And you've got great respect for each other's culture.
Yeah,
To a point where my neighbors who are Afrikaans, I've got Afrikaans neighbors on either side. They know they can park their cars in my yard
yeah,
without having to ask me
yeah,
because we've
yeah,
got great respect for each other. And that's
yeah,
all that we need in society is
yeah,
to respect our cultural differences. And we're all going to live in peace.
yeah,
And that's the beauty of a community such as Silver Lakes that is
yeah,
very diverse.
yeah. We're going to have to start closing down. I'm really enjoying this discussion a lot, and too much, in fact, because there's a lot of other stuff I'd like to ask you for fun, just for fun.
Right.
Bear with me. Are you what some people will call, I think the word is a coconut?
So, I've been condemned, into the character, to be quite honest, because
At
when
least you have a
people keep
sense of
on,
humor.
yes, people keep on saying it to me that you are a coconut, you. So I've accepted it. If
Yeah,
that's the case, that's the case. But I've not forgotten the fact that I'm black, to be quite honest.
yeah,
I
yeah.
haven't. The fact that I'm black still lives deep within my mind.
Mhm.
And yeah, and for me, if being a coconut is what it means to be truly diverse, well, let it be.
Yeah,
I'm a
I don't.
proud coconut.
I don't think so. I don't think you're a coconut. I think you're the product of your upbringing. I think you're the product of the environment in which you grew up. So I don't take my question seriously. It's more sort of tongue in cheek. We need to close down
Yeah.
here, but I want to take it more to a little bit of a more serious closing. Um, when you and I'm really trying to understand. So forgive me my question if it sounds racist or rude or whatever the case might be. But a black guy growing up in this really posh suburb of Pretoria, going into the townships and being confronted with this, and I talk about vast poverty. We talk about massive poverty in South Africa. And I'll remind you of a little statistic that I just read before we started this conversation. According to the World Bank, there is something, as you and I are sitting and having our chat here now and having a lovely time at it from my point of view, at least, there are, though, at least between 12 and 16 million people in South Africa that will go to bed tonight with not enough food in their stomachs. That's a very, very serious issue. And at the end of the day, I think, and I'd like to close our discussion on this. Um, we talk about economic models for South Africa. How do we emancipate people from poverty? How do we develop the country such that we don't have 16 million people going hungry tonight? I wrote it down here for myself just to get clarity. Is identifying the ideal economic model in South Africa is a little bit like an elastic band. I think that's also the age-old discussion, the
Mm,
constant tension, the snapping
mm,
between the extremes of the unfettered free market capitalism on the one hand and government intervention on the other hand. Um, Socialism, I guess the correct word is to use. In your view, does government have a vital role to play in driving social and economic development in South Africa? Or should we purely, and I've spoken to Rob Herzog not too long ago and got the impression from him, unleash pure market forces and let them sort it out?
Well, I think I would like to answer your first question, and I'm going to come to the second question, which was on the vast poverty in the townships, right? And that is just to say, I think the vast poverty is very self-explanatory. You go into the townships today, we've got many children that suffer from kwashiorkor. We've got many
Say
children
that
that
again. So,
suffer
married children that suffer from,
kwashiorkor.
Mhm. Which is,
When you've got what's the word again? A big stomach, but it's
oh, I see.
there's
Okay.
a
Okay.
specific word for it, right?
Swollen tummy. Yeah, I understand.
Yes,
Yeah.
swollen tongue, yes. So you've got many children suffering from stunted growth. I mean,
Hmm.
I couldn't believe it. I was in the township. There's this other short kid comes to me, and in my mind, it's a kid. The guy tells me that he's 14 years old. Short kid. He is
Yeah.
the size of my youngest cousin, who is
Yeah.
9 years old. And somewhat society has to continue because
Yeah.
that's the world we live in. So the bottom line is, I'm not for grants. I know my party is for grants, the DA is for grants, but personally, I'm not for grants. I don't believe it's the way of dealing with economic issues. Number one or number two, but also the amount of money grant recipients get is not enough. I mean, it's so heart saddening. It's painful. There's an Afrikaans word for it called hartseer,
Hmm.
that you become heartbroken
Yeah.
when you see what goes on there.
Mhm.
But be that as it may, that's what's happening there. Now, to your second question about government intervention, for me, I do believe to a certain degree, you do need government intervention to a certain degree, but to a limited one, be that as it may. What I mean is, we need to open up the economy, as Rob has said, which is correct. We need to have a free market economy. Let us open it up, let it be competitive. But let us keep certain institutions, such as the Competitions Commission, which do regulate certain industries, to ensure that there is still just and fair business being practiced within society.
Yeah.
Now, what do I mean? I am a nationalist. I'm a proud nationalist. I believe in the South African dream that doesn't exist, but I believe that we need to have a South African dream, as the Americans have. I believe in a free market economy. I do believe that social democracy has its perks and its cons, but I do believe it's one of the systems that could be considered, considering where we are as South Africa. But I am a libertarian.
Mm.
I am a libertarian.
Yeah.
Libertarian who is a nationalist. You don't often see that, but I exist.
Yeah.
And so I believe that is how we are going to salvage the South African situation. If we
Yeah.
can have a free market economy where we can invite investors from all over the place to come and start up businesses, we need to be the capital of startups in this country.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
we need to do if we are to fix South Africa. Like I was telling you earlier on in the show, I went to Israel, right? Now, in Israel, I had learned one thing during my time there was Israel is one of the best destinations to have a startup after the US, of course. It is the second best destination to have a startup. Many companies come from Israel. Microsoft, IBM, the list is long
Yeah. Yeah.
that comes from Israel. So we need to be that type of a country.
I got two little last questions. And I'm
Great.
still trying to figure out exactly where do I put you on the scale, because at the end of the day, I think it is that elastic band. Less government interference, more government interference, and I think that will remain that into the future. That will always be in in the detail. But I came
Right.
across, and I'm going to put you on the spot now, and
Right.
I do it well intended. I came across a work of a colleague of yours, Gareth Cliff, who is
Yes, Gareth.
one of the truth, a journalist I don't really know, but I well respect, and I saw him on the Piers Morgan show, and I hat off for what he's doing. But he said something that struck me the other day, and I talk about this tension between ruthless, pure cowboy capitalism on the one hand, and on the other hand, the nanny state. This tension that we're talking about. Gareth said something, and I'm going to put it on the screen for our viewers to see as well. He says one of the problems with the democracy, with our democracy in general terms, is that too many people get to vote. And when
Yeah.
he said that, my ears obviously pricked up. And he said he's got the solution. And the three solutions that he talks about is that one, only legal citizens get to vote. And I
Mhm.
kind of go along with him. It seems to me a simple one and a good one. The second
Mhm.
solution is dual citizens don't get to vote in South Africa. And I'm kind
Mhm.
of like, we can discuss that, because I do know that when the election time comes, your guys, the Democratic Alliance, is going to campaign here in Europe and in London, and you're going to beg for our votes. So I just want to
Yeah.
mention it to Gareth as well in the
You might see
context
me
of
in
that
Amsterdam
statement.
asking for your vote.
Yes, you'll be out there asking us to vote for you. I know that. So I'm not so sure about this whole dual citizen proposal of Gareth Cliff here. But the last one struck me. He said, um, if you are on social welfare of any kind, your vote
Mhm.
should be taken away.
Mhm.
Now, I showed that to my neighbor, because we talk a lot about South Africa. And I must say, a Dutch woman, she was quite shocked. How could somebody say something like that? So my question really is, do you agree with what Gareth Cliff said there in this little clip, that if you are on any form of social welfare of any kind, your vote should be taken away?
Okay, I've been thinking about this for a long time. I think one of the problems we have with our democracy is that too many people get to vote. Now, I know this sounds like sacrilege to some people who believe in the universal franchise, and it's been lionized by lots of politicians in the last 100 years. But I actually think the solution is to limit the number of people who vote. And I've got 3 things that will make that very, very doable immediately. The first one is only legal citizens of South Africa get to vote. In other words, if you're a dual citizen, sorry, you don't get to vote in our elections. You can try the other country that you're a citizen of. The other one, and by the way, that means illegal immigrants won't get to vote either, because some of them do cheat the system and take part in our elections. Now, if you are not a citizen of this country, if you don't care the most about South Africa, sorry, no vote. The second thing is that if you're on social welfare of any kind, if you are being paid by the government to live, which means you're being paid by the other taxpayers to live, you don't get to have a say in the government, because all you're interested in is voting yourself more money. So no social welfare recipients will ever get to vote. It seems fair to me. Those people are already being paid for by the other people. Their reward is that they get a vote. The people who are on social welfare get money, free money from the government. So that's number 2. And number 3.
No, I disagree. I disagree. Otherwise, that means you who's on social welfare, the decision is not being made by you. I disagree vehemently, for that matter.
Yeah.
And that is because I understand where Gareth is coming from, but I don't believe the solution is the correct one.
Yeah.
You see, as a politician, here's an inside secret, and for Gareth as well, is the South African electorate is not an educated electorate. It's an electorate that reacts to noise. So the solution for dealing with that does not mean let us cut out those that react to the noise and only keep those that are academics. No, that is not the solution, because we would be cutting out the vast majority. And therefore, you have got a democracy that is voted in by who and represents who.
Yeah.
Because the question would be, I, who is in my 20s, I'm not on social welfare, but let's imagine I was. My first question to you, or to Gareth rather, would be, the person who voted for this guy that's supposedly representing me, because I never gave them a mandate to do this. You know, so I do get the thinking, but it's a very dangerous thinking. One thing that I do think we should consider is having we need to have a college representative type of vote. So we need to have a federal system like the US. That's one of my beliefs, where all key decisions can be made in Pretoria, but let us downscale decisions. Let us allow for local government and provincial government to actually make serious critical decisions. Because I am of the belief that if we can be realistic, the problems that people in KwaZulu-Natal face are very different to the ones that people in the Eastern Cape face. People in KwaZulu-Natal don't have issues of crossing rivers to get to schools. It's people in the Eastern Cape that do, you know. So if we can start to have a federal society and vote based on federalism, I believe that is the key. Another way I think that Gareth could have looked at this was, when I speak of the college electorate type of vote, is if you look at the US, you've got certain states that bring, for example, 50 odd college votes in order to get to the 270 number. You know. Now, the states that have got the higher number of college representation, or college vote representation, are the states with higher population, the states with more economic participation or economic power, are the states with more academically educated people, are the states with more technology, more industries. Now, I believe that is a more just and equitable way of voting. I think that is the direction we should take, not to say people shouldn't vote.
Yeah, I must say, personally, I'm very happy with your answer. And I also questioned Gareth's statement here a little bit, and I just got this little bit of information for myself just just to cover my viewpoint. Studies consistently show that the vast majority of people, even here in very developed countries as well, over 80% in global surveys people say they prefer meaningful work because it gives you a sense of dignity and stability over social grants. So the idea of the lazy guy lying on the couch just waiting for the nanny state to take care of him is a nonsense idea. It's really not true. That's my reaction to that. Last question to you, and let me in advance really thank you for a fantastic discussion, and I'm certainly going to invite you back, and I hope you're going to indulge me to come and have a chat again. I read that you're a great admirer of Julius Nyerere. I'm not so sure if I say the name now. The Tanzania's founding president, great African leader. You're an admirer of him, and I asked Grok to kind of encapsulate for me the philosophy of Nyerere. Sorry, my apologies for not saying his name correct. It seems to be encapsulated in the philosophy of Ujamaa. I might not say that correct again, which is the Swahili word for familyhood or fraternity, a uniquely African form of socialism that rejected Western capitalism and Marxism in favor of communal self-reliance, social justice, and egalitarian development rooted in traditional African values and of extended family and village cooperation. Is that how you identify with this African leader, or what is it that captured you about this African leader?
It was the self-development part. Okay, I'm not a socialist, but it's more on the self-development part and the rejection of communism. Now, to understand this is, I'm not a fan of aid. This was a guy who I believe came into power and understood, or at least for a guy who had just come out of colonization, at least had a form of understanding of how to bring a country together, around a certain identity, which is progressive, to be quite honest, where we say, guys, let us focus on self-development. Asia today is where it is because of self-development. I mean, one of the people that I look up to from Asia, who I would compare to Julius Nyerere, is Lee Kuan Yew. I know he's a benevolent dictator and all sorts, but the ideas of self-development are so fundamental. The ideas of self-determination, and those are the same ideas that I find in the Afrikaans community, which motivate me every day to believe that we still can say South Africa, same as the Zulu nation. Hence, I think you did say that the Afrikaans community admired the Zulu nation so much, even during apartheid days. And that is because, the Zulu nation had this belief of unity and nationalism, and we can do this thing together. Zulu people somewhat believe that they could run KZN as a country without any minerals. They believe that we could do such an amazing job. Because it's so entrenched in their minds of the self-development, of we can upskill each other. I mean, I make the example of, you look at, so in the Zulu culture, there's this traditional music called Maskandi. And many Maskandi artists make a lot of money because they get tens of millions of views. And those tens of millions of views come from Zulu people. They get more views than a South African hip-hop artist. Same as the Afrikaner musicians. Afrikaner musicians are able to make a living because Afrikaners support their musicians. And that is the beauty of self-determination. Hence, I was a fan of this philosophy of, let us gather people around a certain ideology where we can march towards one direction and have shared values and shared principles of building a nation. And trust me, we'll go sky high.
Last question, does that mean then that you embrace the idea of devolution of power, more power to regions? That's where the future is.
Yes, it is.
Khule Maseku, thank you very, very much for this really fantastic discussion. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Johan. Great to be here.